Hey guys, what's going on? So today I wanted to make a video on Pokemon. So a lot of things have been going on with Pokemon lately. A lot of people are angry at Pokemon. A lot of people are perfectly fine with Pokemon. So I wanted to give my thoughts on things I think could be improved in Pokemon. I played it since the original Red and Blue version, and I played just about every game. So I wanted to give my opinions on things I think can be improved. And the first thing I wanted to do today is talk about Pokemon Sword and Shield, because that is the most recent game, and it has a lot of fans divided more than they've ever really been. This is going to be a pretty long video. We're going to be going over a lot of things here. I will have time skips in the description, so if there's something specifically you want to skip towards, I will have it in the description, and it will also tell you what I'll be going over. So the first thing I'm going to go over is Pokemon Sword and Shield. So when Pokemon Sword and Shield was first announced, I was genuinely pretty excited, as I think a lot of people were, because we got Pokemon Let's Go, and some people were happy and not so happy about that, because it was another Generation 1 remake. But a lot of people were excited because they thought, Pokemon Sword and Shield was going to be that next step, that next level on the Switch that we had been waiting for so long. It was going to be something akin to being like a Breath of the Wild. But what we got instead was basically just a powered-up 3DS graphic version of a 3DS Pokemon game. And I think that made a lot of people frustrated because they had waited so long for this game to come out. And while I'm not one of the biggest fans of Pokemon Sword and Shield, I do think there is things in Pokemon Sword and Shield that they did correctly, and things I actually have to give them credit for, because they actually were pretty good ideas. We're not talking about Dynamax. It's not Dynamax. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today is how Pokemon can be improved, and a lot of the things are going to be related to Pokemon Sword and Shield, since they were the last games to come in to the threshold of Pokemon. So the first thing I want to talk about is the wild area. I think it was a great idea. We're not really going to talk about the graphics. I know that the graphics are pretty awful, and that the render distances are also pretty awful. And I think the render distances matter more because it kind of takes you out of the immersion of being in a place where Pokemon are supposed to naturally exist, and everything's supposed to basically flow naturally like they live there. And I think that's just something that could easily be improved in future games. But I think one thing that would be really cool is, if anybody remembers Pokemon Snap, it was a pretty old game, but it allowed you to be immersed with the Pokemon in their world and take photos of them. Now, Sun and Moon tried to put this into their game, but unfortunately there was so many regulations on where you could take pictures and how you could take pictures that it wasn't fun, and it was more like a chore than something of a side quest that people could do and have fun with. And I think another thing they can do when they would implement this is basically make this the new Safari Zone. So basically the Safari Zone, I guess, kind of went away because there wasn't really much different about it. Like, you could catch rare Pokemon there, and that was cool, but there was nothing else that it offered. So if you created a Safari Zone that was literally the wild area, and you could also take photos, and in this wild area they would take more effort to make them more animated and have the Pokemon interact with each other and make it more immersive, I think that would be really cool, and it would actually have people, having a lot of fun with it. People would be posting pictures of them seeing Pokemon interact with each other, or Pokemon interact with them. And I think that could be an amazing feature. And, a lot of people, some people don't actually like battling in Pokemon games as much as they like exploring and doing everything else. So that would be directed towards them. And I think with the Pokemon world being so vast, that's such a great idea to implement that. So, making it the Safari Zone also for the people, because there's so many people that do shiny hunting. I think what would be really cool is the Pokemon that are really rare in the Safari Zone, you could shiny hunt them, and maybe even create a new color for the shiny variants of old Pokemon, giving them a reason to go in there and look for these Pokemon. And then you could also change out the Pokemon that are in the Safari Zone every so often. But I think that would be a great step in the right direction to make this wild area really like that next level, like everyone thought it would be. So moving into the next thing, this is just a little thing I think that they did right in the new games. It's third-person perspective. So third-person perspective is really cool because I think it gives you more immersion into the world. Everything is like, you can see all the buildings' actual scale, like how big the buildings actually are. And like you can see down this road, you can't see the other side. So you have no idea what's over there. And I think this especially applies to when you're in caves, in a forest. You're able to be immersed and you don't know which direction is the right direction because you're not seeing it from that bird's eye perspective. I think only one thing that they fell short in with this is the fact that there's so many parts that are like gated off that you can't actually really explore. And so that was kind of a setback to the third person perspective. But I think overall, this is a great idea and this is a direction they should stay in. And I've been wanting third person for a while, so I'm really glad that they actually did it. Next, difficulty settings. So I think there should be a beginner, and beginner would just be like what Pokemon is normally. But I think there should also be a master setting. And when you go to the master setting, I think it should make all the levels of the Pokemon from the trainers to the gym leaders higher. And later in this video, I will go over how I think that could actually be implemented into some other idea with the difficulty level. And I think it's a really cool idea that people would really enjoy. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So the next thing in terms of difficulty is rivals. So rivals have been pretty challenging in past games, but as of late, they've become less challenging. And I know a lot of people have a problem with the fact that the rival will always pick what you're good against instead of what you're weak to now, which kind of takes away from, you having to grow as a trainer and make sure that you have the Pokemon that you can beat their starter with, because you can't beat it with your own starter because they picked your weakness. Or, getting moves like Thunder Punch for your fire starter if you're fighting a water Pokemon that you're weak to. And I think that was really cool because it made you grow as a trainer. It made you get a full team, make sure that you covered all the different types. It tried to improve you as a trainer. And I feel like the new games don't really do that as much. And I feel like, in some cases, I don't think Pokemon will actually fix this problem. So I think a way to get around this problem would be to do what Pokemon Let's Go did. Make it 2 starters. And make it to where they have no type advantage over each other. And I feel like this is the right direction to go because now they don't have to fix that problem. It's just now it's 2 starters. Because why is every region fire, water, and grass? If every region's supposed to be special and every region's supposed to have its own Pokemon, then why are we always having the same fire, water, grass starter? I think that's something that needs to change. And I think that would be a good change because now people won't have to argue about the rivals being too easy or too hard. And the other thing is the box art. So it's Pikachu and Eevee. There's no legendaries on the front covers. So if you don't look at leaks or look at the information, if they kept the legendaries secret, except for leaks of course, then you wouldn't know what the legendaries look like until you played the game. And I think that makes it mysterious. It makes it cool. You won't know what the legendaries look like until you actually find them in the game, which is so cool. I mean, you wouldn't know what the legendaries looked like. And I feel like that's the mystery that we used to have in the old games that we don't have anymore. And I think that would be another step in the right direction. So the last thing on this one is I wanted to talk about the main characters. They don't really have a story. I know a thing that a lot of people were talking about is there was no voice acting in the new games. And I think that is a problem because I think voice acting makes it feel more real. And I think that every main character in Pokemon, because in the manga, they all have their own stories. They all have their own, roads they go down. They have different personalities. And I think that's something they should implement into Pokemon. Of course, you can customize them and make them look however way you want. But they all have their stories. And they communicate with the other characters. And you get to see them grow as a character during the story. I think that's something Pokemon should put in. It's something that we never had. And I think it's something that would really intrigue fans, both old and new, to listen and really get immersed into that main character's world and see how they're different from the last main character from the last game. I think that would be amazing for them to implement that, and I think it's something people would really appreciate. So going into the next thing, so we have Legendaries, and the problem with Legendaries today is if you're looking at these Legendaries here, it's Mewtwo, Lugia, Ho-Oh, and Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza. And what's different about them is the fact that you always had to go on these special side missions to get them. Like, you had to go get the kimono girls to dance and do a special ceremony for Lugia and Ho to appear. Giovanni never had control of Mewtwo either. He lost control of Mewtwo when they tried to create him, and Mewtwo was like never part of his evil plan. His evil plan was to just try to take over and catch Pokemon and then sell them on the black market. So the thing is, I feel like Legendaries nowadays, it's the same story. It's the evil team gets them, the evil team loses control, you catch them, you defeat them, and then that's the end of the evil person's plan. I feel like sometimes maybe the Legendary doesn't have to be part of the plan. Maybe they can just have their own story. Now, you're probably thinking with Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, it's like, yeah, they tried to control Groudon and Kyogre, but they also implemented Rayquaza, which was this third Legendary that I feel like not a lot of people in the story knew about. And you had to go find him, and that was like its own mission, going to find this third Legendary that you had no idea existed until they started telling tales of it. And you had to go find it in order to stop Kyogre and Groudon because you physically couldn't beat it with your Pokemon. And I think that was a really cool idea. And I think that's something that we need to go to. I think these stories should be more elaborate, and they should, like, you know, have these bigger stories for the Legendaries than just them being the evil team's plan. Another thing I think they should bring back is Shadow Pokemon. Now, this is from the Pokken game. It's Shadow Mewtwo. I think it would be really cool if we had cutscenes like this in Pokemon. Ones that you actually were like, wow, that looks amazing. And then you're about to fight the Shadow Mewtwo. But not only that, I think they should bring back Shadow Pokemon in general. Like, that was a story that we had in Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon Gale of Darkness. And they kind of just threw it away. They didn't really utilize it. And I think it could have been a really, really cool thing for us to keep in the Pokemon storyline. And that would be a really cool idea for the next villain team to take into account. So with this, we have some art here, giving credit to Shadow Lifeman from DeviantArt. So he made a Mega Shadow Lugia, and I think what kind of sparked in my mind is, why don't we have a shadow mechanic where Pokemon can be turned into a different shadow form? Now, I've been thinking about how that could be competitive. So basically, they would be holding a shadow item specifically for them, just like Mega Evolution. And they would be given like a default ability like Pressure, and their stats would be increased. But then you have to decide whether do you want the stat increase or do you want the unique ability that that Legendary has. And I think that would create some kind of a cool dynamic with competitive. But at the same time, if you purify that Pokemon, instead of them just being purified and you just have that Pokemon, I think by purifying them, you should be able to get like hidden abilities. Abilities that aren't accessible normally, except through like special, events and things like that. I think that would be a reason for them to purify them, and I think that would be really cool. I think people would really enjoy that. So I think that should be implemented into the game as well. And I think that would be a cool mechanic because Mega Evolution was actually very popular for amongst fans, as opposed to like other things like Dynamaxing and like other things they've tried. Mega Evolution was like a really big hit. So I think to bring it back, but not only bring it back, but bring it back with the Shadow Pokemon would be really cool. And as you can see here, I mean, look at this cutscene. Like, how amazing would this be to have this kind of a cutscene in a Pokemon game with such HD graphics and to make it look so great, and then have a character, like the characters in the Shadow Pokemon games, there was always a person with you that could see the Shadow Pokemon. So there could be another girl like this one here that helps you defeat Mewtwo. It's not just you that defeats Mewtwo. It's like you and a bunch of other people, which would also make the Legendaries seem like more than what they are, or more amazing like they should be. So going into the next point here, one thing I loved about Sun and Moon is the fact that you were able to, as champion, take on challengers. And although you didn't get a lot of like amazing challengers from Sun and Moon because they were just the Sun and Moon characters, I think this could be put a step up. So the first thing I want to talk about is VS Seeker. So VS Seeker is something you get in the games I don't think you get it in the new games. I think it's just from the old games. But what you could do with it is you could press it, and then old trainers that you fought before could have more powerful Pokemon and fight you again. Now, this was kind of fun, but I don't feel like it was as fun as it should have been, because there's only so many times you can fight Joey's Raticate at level 40 before it gets boring. And so what I think you could do is, of course, have it to where you can re-challenge the gym leaders. But what I think would be awesome is, let's say that you beat the Elite Four, just like every single game, and now you're bored sitting on the throne because there's nothing to do. Once you become champion, there's not really much to do. You don't get to go back and challenge people usually. So what if they bring that mechanic back? But instead of just bringing it back and fighting people specifically from that game, make it like the World Tournament from Black and White 2. And what I mean by that is, if you're the champion, you will get a notification on your VS Seeker that you have a champion challenge. If you accept this challenge, you will be immediately warped to the Pokemon Center. You will walk through a special door because you are the champion, and you have unlocked that door. You will sit on the throne, and upon sitting upon it, a cutscene will open, and someone that's an old champion or someone that's a gym leader will come up to you and challenge you. I think that would be way cooler than just, a bunch of people from just that game coming to challenge you. Now, here's where the difficulty comes back. So if you're a beginner, then they'll be set at level 70 or level 80 for their Pokemon, just like they normally would be in the old games. But if you're at master level, their Pokemon will all be set to level 100, just like yours. And not only that, if you're fighting someone like Brock, who has a rock-based team, and you're thinking, I have a Blastoise or a water-type Pokemon, so this will be easy for me, I think that those gym leaders should have a direct counter, if possible, to water Pokemon. So it becomes more challenging. I think they should have all competitive movesets. So now the game's actually challenging and actually hard. And if you lose, then you have to come back through the Elite Four, which will be stronger now, and then you have to go back and fight that exact same challenger to become the champion yet again. I think that would create an amazing dynamic, and I think people that don't necessarily want to play online against other people would have fun with that, because that is a challenge that you could do forever. There would be so many videos of people taking on these challengers and taking on these champions and having so much fun with it. But the other thing is, for online, let's bring back secret bases and give it a lot more diversity in terms of items and the way your base can look. But at the same time, you can make your own gym or make your own Elite Four. And then you can watch people challenge your teams and then be able to see where your team lacked, see where your team could do better. And I think it would be fun to challenge other people's Elite Fours and gyms. And that would be another online thing that people could really, really enjoy. And I think that would be really cool. So to go into the next part of this post-game, Battle Frontier. So they took out the Battle Frontier. We no longer have the Battle Frontier, which is pretty unfortunate. I think the Battle Frontier was a lot of fun. And the thing I'm really going to talk about here is the Battle Institute, or actually not the Battle Institute, the Battle Factory. So with the Battle Factory, you were able to actually rent out Pokemon and then use them and to win the whole, Battle Factory itself. But what could be cool here is if they implemented it in a way that when you rented these Pokemon, you could choose what moves they had. And upon doing that, you could try out different skill sets with these Pokemon. So if it's a new Pokemon that you don't know if you want to go out and catch it and breed it and give it the right moves or use the items on it, you can actually test it out before that ever happens. And you could test it out here, giving this not only a purpose to get battle points, but also a purpose to test out Pokemon. And then upon doing that, you'd be able to figure out what Pokemon you like, what Pokemon you want to invest in, what Pokemon you want to use your time for, because not a lot of people have a lot of time to do a lot of breeding and all that kind of stuff nowadays. And I think that goes to show with the fact that they implemented the new mechanic where you can change the natures and change the IVs of the Pokemon that you are playing in the new games. So they're going towards a more quick paced, figure out who you like. We can change the natures now. You don't have to sit there and breed for hours and hours just for one Pokemon, or an entire day for one Pokemon. So I think the renting Pokemon would be a great idea to further that, to make it easier for people to find what Pokemon they like and invest in those Pokemon, and not necessarily need to spend a month or a week of time trying to create one team. So the final thing I wanted to go into, so upon Pokemon Sword and Shield coming out, they also implemented Pokemon Home. And this is pretty cool. It looked really cool, but it didn't seem any different from Pokemon Bank, meaning it's just another cloud service where your Pokemon will just be saved. And not only that, but the Pokemon on the cloud service, you can't use all of them because not all of them can go to Pokemon Sword and Shield. So to fix this problem, I thought what would be a great idea is to bring back Pokemon Battle Revolution. Now for me, Pokemon Battle Revolution was actually one of my favorite games of all time. I thought it was amazing. I could battle my teams against each other. I could go to these amazing looking coliseums and fight people online. And there was an announcer, and the announcer sounded awesome. I'm going to show you part of a match just to give you the idea of what it was like. But I thought this was an amazing idea. When I first saw this, I was like head over heels in love with this game. And the fact that there's an announcer just makes it feel so much more real. It makes you feel like you're actually in a coliseum, you're actually fighting. And what they could do with this is they could put all the Pokemon on this game, because it would be nothing but a fighting game. So the story of the actual story games like Pokemon Sword and Shield would just have the story. They'd be able to put more into the Safari Zone if they make that the new wild area. Make that more immersive, make the story look better, make the graphics look better, and then only have so many Pokemon in it. But then on the other hand, they'd have Pokemon Battle Revolution that's literally just for online battling with Pokemon, and all your Pokemon could go on it. So I think that would be a really cool idea. And then you can see it here. The fact that they run up to each other and actually attack each other is really cool. And I think that like I said, the announcer just makes it feel more real. So I think that's a really cool idea that they could implement into Pokemon. And I think a lot of fans would really enjoy it. I mean, I played competitive Pokemon for a long time, and I absolutely loved the idea of having an announcer and making it feel so much more immersive into the battles. So to bring that back and then be able to actually use all your Pokemon again would be really incredible. So that's all my ideas for how Pokemon can be improved. Let me know what you think down in the description. Let me know if there's things that maybe I didn't cover, or maybe things that could also be implemented in the game to make them better. And we'll see in the future if maybe Pokemon takes any of these ideas and puts them into their games. So leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.